So they got back in their buggies. And I should tell you a little word about Peter. I've talked a lot about Heidi and a little bit about how she looks and stuff, quite a bit actually. Peter, uh, I'll just say, just like Heidi is just probably a little shorter than average, Peter is a little taller than average. He's basically a Swede. And he's got blonde hair, but it's kept in blue eyes, like you imagine a Swede. Uh, but his hair is kept short and sort of real executive, like a short haircut. You know, he's just got out of MIT, and most of those MIT graduates were busy looking for the very best jobs in their field of engineering, and he bore that still. He was beginning to let his beard grow a little bit. He'd always shaved up, but so now you know a little bit about Peter as he helped Heidi up, gentlemanly like, into the buggy. And when he got in and they were about to start off, first he said he'd noticed something about that buggy. He said to Mervin, "Mervin, you've got some stuff back in here in the back seat that I'm puzzled at. You've got like first aid supplies and uh, stuff that you'd think a doctor would have or something." And Mervin said, "Well, I'm a first responder. I've been trained that way for decades. I've done that. You see, sometimes first an ambulance won't get to the place where a first responder needs to be, or won't get there fast enough. And so, even though this just looks like a regular buggy, if I put a red flag up on that pole and take off, Kelly and me, we take off. Well, it's because there's some kind of emergency. So I've got a few basic things there. So that was explained. Okay, I understand. All right. Now, they got back on the street. It was the next street down, really. And now they were heading kind of back in the direction away from the deep valley. But they only went a few blocks. And then they turned right. And this was going to take them down to the one of the sides of that triangle that I was telling you about. So they were going down that street, and Mervin started to just name some names as he went by. On their left, when he got to the corner, he said, that's the Toast the Post. And it's a funny name maybe, but see, that was the old post office. And there's a little cafe there if you want to stop in for lunch or something like that. Great place. But anyway. So then they stopped and they took a right. Now this was a one-way street because the streets were narrow in this town for various reasons. One of which is because it was a fairly old town. It came from the time of horse and buggy, really. But some of the streets were narrow enough that, well, eventually they'd made many more of them into one-way streets. Well, this was a one-way street, and it was heading back to their right. It was heading north now. And he's going along, and he said, now that on your right, that's the tavern, big brick building. There's the garden, and there's the bank on it. The tavern was a tavern, bank on it was, he explained, that's a really nice restaurant. That's where you'd want to go if you wanted to have a fancy meal. And then, since there was a parking lot across from those buildings, kind of perched on the side of the gorge, he led the little parade of three now with their white flags, and they took a turn to the left and pulled out into that parking lot, just as a way of turning around to go back, because they had to complete that triangle. And once again, Irvin suggested they get out, but he wasn't gonna. He didn't want to extend this too much because he knew that was beyond his domain. He needed to get them there. But there, once again, they could take a look at their hotels. Well, they couldn't see the ones way back, but they could see the big one, the 4-star. I had that wrong. I think I told it that was a 3. No, that was a 4-star hotel, and it was really quite big. It was a little bit bigger than life. They could see that now. Now they could see this under some trees. They didn't have that expansive view that they had from up above at the park by the Mennonite church, old Mennonite church. But they could see underneath those trees that same area because it was coppiced every year. Otherwise, the undergrowth would have come up because there was vegetation on that hillside, and some of the branches were cut off. So you still had that view, which was wonderful. You just didn't, if you wanted to see the Alp, you'd have to walk to the end a little bit. It was possible. So anyway, they looked again, and Jan, he was just eating up that water wheel. He was getting a good look at it. I'll tell you about that later. But the one thing that Mervin wanted to point out was, he said, up there on your left, you see up there, it's kind of covered with the branches, but maybe you can see, that's the water tower lookout. There used to be a water tower up there, but it was derelict. It was getting old, and they tore it down. But then they used those footers, and they built another tower out of wood this time, but solid, really solid. And it's not as high as that water tower used to be when the tannery was down there. But it's high enough that if you go up there, once again, you've got a view of Sadler's Valley and all that's below it, or all that's in it. And there's a food court sort of near the bottom of it. So I recommend, if you want to have something light to eat before you go to bed, that you stop there. And now that food court has got all kinds of different foods. I'll tell the story about that later, not now. But anyway, he pointed out that's where it is, and we'll be going very near it as I take you to your hotel. So they got back in and continued now around that triangle, and he said, there's the old police station, there's a clothing store, there's a little restaurant there called Darlene's on the left, and then on the right, up by the train station, which was coming, there's a little building. He said, now that's where your guides are. That's the often online tour guides building. Just a little building, and there's where you're going to find Raph and Prof and Beatrice and Telly. So that'll be easy enough to get to, and they can help you out. So they went on past the train station, which was restored, a beautiful train station. Got a little bit further, and now they had finally completed the triangle. The Earth's Drink Park was on their left. They took a right, went up the hill, and a couple of streets, really. And up there, they took a right. And Mervin said, now you're on Ridgeback. And we're going to go along Ridgeback. Now, as they started on Ridgeback, there's a park down below it. Now, see, I'm twisting you all around, but they're going north now. And down in that park, there was a Little League field. And they could see that there was a game starting up. There were young boys, in this case, in uniforms, and they were getting to play a Little League game. It had lights, but they'd come on because it was getting dark. And on they went. Not very far, but they could see what Mervin had called the water tower lookout. They saw that, and they saw the food court. And on they went. But now kind of into the woods and around a little bit until they finally came out to the back side of the Luzern hotel, the one that was, I said, bigger than life. And there they stopped because Mervin was going to let off the parents first. And maybe I'll stop for now too, so I don't lay too much on you all at once. He had gotten the parents to their hotel. Bye for now.